Welcome to Blonde Cards and Crafts. Let's make something together. Hello crafter, welcome to my craft room. Today I'm going to be making 3 cards and I'll be using this, the Papercraft Society box number 18. The 3 cards that I'm going to make are a Zfold card, a pop-up card, and last but not least, we're going to make a Peekaboo card. So I hope you'll join me. You can use whatever you have in your stash and make the cards with me. The first card we're going to make is a Zfold card, and this measures 9.5 by 7, scored at 2.5 and 5. And we're going to fold it with a valley here and a mountain there. And that'll give us our Zfold card. Next, I'm going to take 2 pieces of patterned paper, and these measure 2.25 by 6 3/4. And these are going to sit on the front of our card. So one will go here, and then the other piece will go in beside it. If I can get this piece straight. Okay, so that's there, and this one will go in here, like so. Then we're going to need a piece of patterned paper for this big panel here. And this one measures 4 3/4 by 6 3/4. And I'll stick that one just there. Now there won't be any room for sentiment on that because we're going to add this, our Zfold part to it. And this piece measures 9.5 by 4, and I've scored it at 4.5 and 7. And then I'm going to put that so that when it's folded over with a mountain and a valley, that then will sit on the front of our card and on the inside of our card. So I'll just put the patterned paper there to give you an idea. This piece then will sit on here, and it doesn't go right to the edge. It sits about here, because if you look, when the card is folded closed and the Z part is folded closed, those two will meet right there in the middle. You see there where that fold is? That's going to meet the fold of our actual card base. So make sure when you're sticking this down, you don't go underneath the fold of the card base there. So we'll have this little piece overlapping, but that's the way I've wanted it. That allows for the piece there at the front. So this strip measures 4 1/4 by 1 inch, and I'm going to put that on the bottom of the back of the card, and this is the area that we're going to use for writing our sentiment. So don't forget, you'll need to stamp on there as well if you want to stamp sentiment. Okay, I've taken the largest stamp, the large round stamp that came in the stamp set, and I'm stamping that on the large panel of the Zfold. And I'm going to stamp that down twice, and I'm using, on the 3 cards, I'm using the inks that came in the kit. So they stamp beautifully, and I'm using the Misty, but that's just to give me that extra leeway. If I want to stamp a second time, I can. So I've taken the sentiment, and that's just to say, and I'm going to stamp that down there. And again, I've done that twice. And I love the script, the font of this sentiment. I think it's really, really lovely. Okay, so next I'm going to take some of the stamps again, and I'm going to stamp the smaller panels, and I'm using this corner stamp. And I'm going to sit this into my Misty again, and I use the magnets there, and then I'm going to pick up the stamp and stamp it down. Now I didn't stamp the whole stamp, and you'll see here once I press it down, the top there on the left, I didn't stamp the extra little swirl, and I think if I had have stamped that down, it would have been in that middle panel, but I think it would have looked nice. But that's kind of what I was going with when I was stamping it. So again, I've stamped it twice, and now I'm going to stamp the middle panel. I'm going to clean my stamp, I'm going to move my magnets, and then I'm going to turn my stamp around so I can stamp on the other panel. And again, I'm going to use the green ink for this, and it's the dark green. It's kind of a forest green color. The colors are lovely this month. And like I said, these inks are lovely and juicy and they stamp really well. So there we go, that's that done a second time. Lovely. Okay, we'll just lift that off now. So I want to use the little flourishes that are on the stamp set just to bring some more of that purple colour onto the front of the card. So I'm going to stamp 2 in the top left and 2 kind of the bottom right. And where the 2 on the top left, they don't join, I'm going to use some enamel dots, and there is sparkle enamel dots, and I'll put one on that so it'll look really cool. Okay, so now I'm stamping a sentiment on my panel, and this panel will be seen when the card is open. And the sentiment in the stamp set, the May Today Bring Health and Happiness, that one was too large, so I'm using a stamp from my stash for this, and it's a Christina Griffiths stamp. Okay, so let's adhere down all our panels now. Like I said, I'm going to stamp a sentiment on the back of my card, and I'm going to use the sentiment that came in the stamp set. So if you want to put a sentiment down, when you put this paper, patterned paper down, now is the time to then stamp your sentiment on the back of the card, because once we put the Z part on, there'll be a bit of bulk. Now I do stamp it after I adhered this down, but I used my Misty and it stamped perfectly. The stamps are good quality, the ink is good quality. I had no problem. So I'm only putting adhesive on the side of this panel that's going to be stuck down onto the card base, and then I'm going to flip it over and I'm going to put a mark there so I know where I'm putting my adhesive for the other side. Perfect. And that's our Z-fold literally done. And I like the look of it. I think of the 3 cards, and I love all 3 of the cards. But if I really had to pick a favorite, I think this one is it. I mean, it's simple, but I love the look of it. Yeah. Anyway, now I'm going to stick down those little enamel sparkling dots. These ones I'm using, I got from Love from Lizzie, and she has them available on her website. I'll leave links down below. Now I'm going to stick down the little strip for the back, and I think it just ties the lovely pattern paper on the front of the card to the back of the card. Perfect. So there we go. That's our first card, our Z-fold card, and yeah, I really like this. I hope you do too. It stands up really well. It looks really well. There's great impact. Just simply using the stamps, and I didn't color in or anything. Just the paper speaks for itself, I think. Great. Okay, now we're moving on to card number 2, and this card was inspired by Dawn from Dawn's Stamping Thoughts. Now I have a 6x6 card base here, and I've cut this myself. I've taken a 12x6 piece of card and I've scored it at 6, and this is going to be a top opening card. So that means our closed end is to the top. I have a piece of pattern paper here, and this piece measures 5 3/4 by 5 3/4, and I'm going to stick that down on the front. But I'm also going to die cut out this oval. Now I want the purple part of the card base, so I'm only going to glue my pattern paper down, but I'm not going to add adhesive where I'm going to be die cutting out. And you'll see why as you watch the video. I thought for my central pop-up, I wanted it to be purple, the same as the card base. But in hindsight, I think I would have stuck the whole lot of this patterned paper down, and I would have used the die cut with the patterned paper on top. I think in hindsight it would have looked nicer, but I do love the outcome of this card and I love the look of it. So like I said, I'm not putting adhesive approximately where I'm going to be die cutting out my oval shape. So it's up to you. Have a look at the finished card and see what you think. If you're going to case this card and do the same as I've done, then you might decide you want to have a purple piece like I did, or you want the pattern paper. So I'm sticking that down now. And I will give this a minute or two to dry before I put it through my die cutting machine. It just allows the glue to go off or to dry before we put it through. Okay, so now I have it die cut out and you can see there my two pieces that came out from that. I have a white piece of cardstock here, and this is 5 3/4 by 5 3/4, and that's going to go inside our card. I also have two pieces for my mechanism. This strip here, it measures 2 1/4 by 3/4 of an inch, and I've scored it at 1 1/4. This piece here is our mechanism piece, and it measures 4 by 3, and I've scored it at 1, 2, and 3 inches. This piece is going to stick onto our card base, and the other piece is going to stick onto our floating oval. And I'll put glue on that side there, and then I'll put it up against the score line, close the front down, and then that sticks that area. That area there will be stuck to the front. And then what we'll do is we'll fold up our mechanism. So you can see there, if that was stuck down, this panel underneath will get stuck down to our white card. So that's where we'll need glue on that. But look, we'll get to that in a minute and I'll show you exactly what we're doing. So this is our floating purple panel, like I said, that I'm keeping. And this is what's going to sit on it. Now I've used the dies that came in the kit. I love this layered die piece. So you can see there, you've got your shadow piece, you've got your fancy piece, and then you have your two ovals, your matte and layer. And I die cut them all out. I did one in white, one in the pattern paper, one in the purple cardstock, and then another one in white. I die cut out the word mum, and I've also die cut out the smaller of the flower. There it is. I die cut that out 6 times, and I've die cut out some of these sprigs to put around it. I have some foam tape on that for a bit of height. I put the little stamen detail inside, and I put some Nuvo drops there, yellow bird, a sparkly Nuvo drop inside that. So that's going to sit on my purple part. I think, yeah, in hindsight, I do like the look of the pattern paper. I think it would have been a little bit softer looking, but I still love the look of it. I still think it's great, but it's up to you. Okay, so that's our main focal point that's going to be on our card. Now what we need to do is stamp this white piece, and I want to use the long floral stamp that came in the kit, and I'm using my Misty to stamp this down. So I'm going to use the green inks that came in the kit. What I'm going to do is I'm going to stamp it with the light green first. I'm going to stamp the whole thing in the light green. And I'm going to do that twice, just so I get a good impression with the ink. Then I'm going to take the darker green and I'm just going to go around the edge of the whole stamp. And that'll give a kind of a gradient look. And I have one of my small blending brushes and I'm just pouncing that over where I have the darker green because I don't want any harsh lines. So it just helps with blending the two inks together. And I did that a couple of times for a finish. And now I can stick this down onto the card base. And again, I'm using my liquid glue, and that just gives me a little wriggle room to make sure that I have it down straight. And of course I got a little smudge of ink, so I've used my eraser to rub that off. Okay, so now we're putting our liquid glue on the top panel and we're folding over the front of our card. Then we're going to fold that in half and put some glue on the bottom panel. Then we're going to fold the whole thing down, and I'm putting a little bit of weight on that. It'll allow that mechanism for the glue to set or to harden or go off, whatever you want to call it, but I'm just giving that a little while. So I put some foam tape on the back of this piece, and it just gives a bit more dimension to the whole thing. Now I'm ready to stick my focal point down. So I have put my purple piece. Now this is the long piece is going to get stuck down to our floating mechanism, and then the shorter side will get stuck to our focal point. So I'll put a little bit of glue on that and then stick that down, and literally that oval just nestles back into where it was die cut out. So some of my little sprigs are too long. I'm going to have to trim them off using my scissors, but I'm not going to throw them away. I'll put a bit of glue on them and I'll tuck them in under the flowers. Lovely. So I feel there's something missing off our focal point. I think the green on the stamped area and the green on the pattern paper on the front of the card, I think that little floating focal point is missing some green. So I'm going to die cut out some more. First of all, I'm going to stamp down the stamp that came in the kit, the May Today Bring Health and Happiness, and I've done that in the purple. And then I've die cut out all the extra little sprigs, and I'm going to tuck them in around the front. And I just think that the greenery there, you pick it up on some of the imagery on the front of the card, and as well it's picked up with our stamped image, the inside of the card. Lovely. I love that. And I think the way that mum piece, I think the way it just floats is really cool. So I've got my yellow bird Nuvo drops, and I'm going to put some of them around our little floating panel, as well as on the front of our card base. Lovely. I love that. Now a tip when you use Nuvo drops, tap your card onto something hard, and what it'll do is it'll help level the Nuvo drops so it gives it a nice dome shape. And I'm just finishing touches here with my Wink of Stella pen, and I have to say it's very hard to get hold of the Wink of Stella or the Spectrum Noir sparkle pens at the moment. But there you go, that's our second card, our floating oval pop-up panel card. And again, as I said, this is inspired by Dawn from Dawn Stamping Thoughts. She made this in a size, the American size, but I thought this would be lovely in a 6x6. Perfect. Okay, and now we're moving on to card number 3. So this card is going to be a 5x7 card, and I have 3 pieces of white card. I have this piece here, which is the back, and it's 5 by 7¼ and I've scored it at 7. This is the front panel and it's 5 by 10¼ and I've scored that at 7. And then this is the middle panel and it's 5 by 11 and I've scored that at 5½. Here I have 2 oval dies, and one is a straight edge and the other is a scalloped edge, and these are nesting dies. And I've taken these 2 because I want to die cut out a frame. So you can see these are the 2 pieces you get when you die cut these out. Now I just want the frame, but those other oval pieces can be used for something else. So I'm going to take the inner die, my straight edged die from this nesting set, and I'm going to use this to die cut out the openings in our Peekaboo card. I've also got some patterned paper here. Now this floral one, this measures 4¾ by 6¾ and this will be for the front. This piece I was going to use on the inside, but I decided to actually stamp an image on the inside, so I'm not going to bother using that at all. Instead, I'm going to use the long floral stamp that's there on the top right. Okay, so we have our front panel here, and I'm scoring this at 3 1/4. And like I said, that piece is going to be for the front of our card. Our card base is actually 3 pieces that we put together, and that allows the peekaboo of the card. So that's our front panel. Next, I have the back panel, and this is 7 1/4 by 5, and I'm scoring it at 7. Now you could score it at 1/4, but I find it's easier to score it at the 7 and have my little tab along here 1/4 of an inch wide. Perfect. So that's our back panel. Then we have our middle panel. And this middle panel measures 10 1/2 by 5, and I'm scoring it at 5 1/4, literally right down the middle. And I'll fold and burnish that. And this part is going to sit in the middle, and we're going to die cut out 2 ovals out of that. Okay, so I have my front panel and I have my patterned paper, and I'm going to glue that down using some liquid adhesive. Now you can use a tape runner or double-sided tape. Just make sure you glue down really well, especially where your die cut opening is going to be. Lovely. So I'll just looking and thinking, oh, is this a directional paper? But it's not really. You could have it any which way. There we go, that's stuck down. Now I want to die cut out my oval from the front of this panel, but I want to make sure that whatever size die I use, it doesn't encroach on that folded over piece there. So I was just checking on the back that it's small enough that it won't. So my die is down and I'm happy with the location of that. I'm going to pull in my Big Shot Plus and I'm going to die cut that out, and I thought I'd leave this in for you to see. So I'm using the Big Shot, I'm using the junior plate, and I'm putting it through, rolling it over and back 4 times because it's 300 GSM cardstock as well as the paper that I'm cutting through. But you can see there it cut through no problem. This little oval piece cut through like butter. Lovely. And don't throw that little panel away, that could be used on another card. So now I have my center or my middle panel, and I fit my die back into the opening we've cut already, a bit like a jigsaw puzzle piece. Now I'm going to put my plate over the top of that, and I'm going to roll it through once, twice, back again. Lovely. So this will have, you'll see it will impress on our middle panel where we're cutting out, but it didn't go the whole way through. So again, I'll sit my die back on that like a puzzle piece, and it kind of sits nicely into itself there. I'll run that through again a couple of times, and now you'll see this time the oval, it just pops out no problem. So there we are, we have die cut out 3 ovals from these 2 panels. Lovely. So we have our front and our middle part. Now I'm going to stick down the middle to the front of our card, and to do that I'm using some Collal glue, and the reason I use this glue is because when this glue dries or sets, it sets rock hard, and this was a tip that I got from Sam from Mixed Up Crafts, and I have to say I love using this glue at times like this for projects like this. So I'm happy with that now. I have my middle panel stuck on to my front panel. I'm now going to use my art glitter glue. I'll stick down my little frame to the front, and this just tidies the front of it up so you don't have that raw edge die cut out. And I've pulled in the yellow. This yellow is from the kit as well. Lovely. So I'm going to leave that now for the glue to do its thing. Now I've got the back panel, And that little tab that we scored, that 1/4 of an inch, I'm going to put some double-sided tape on that. Now I need to stick, you can see here, there's the front, there's the middle, and there's our back panels. And I'm sticking this back panel onto the middle panel. I hope you could see that. There's another tip as well about putting a little bead of glue, and I'm using a 1/8 inch red liner tape on the inside of our card at the very back. And this is on the back panel where we would have folded over that little piece. And that just helps the mechanism to move better. So that's our card base done, guys. That's it in a nutshell. Once you've got that, you're made. It's all about embellishing now. So I'm going to take the Just to Say stamp. I'm going to put my card base into my MISTI, and I'm going to stamp that down. So my card is in the closed position, and I will stamp that down using the darker green color ink. And again, I'll do that twice just to make sure it's a nice and, you know, rich. And then I'm going to take the little flourish and I'm going to stamp that in purple. And I'm just going to do that using one of my little blocks because it's so small. I'm really happy that this is going to stamp out with no problems. And it did, it stamped beautifully. Perfect. So now when you open the card, our little piece slides in front of that. So we need to stamp a sentiment on this part. Now I was going to use the stamp in the kit, the May Today Bring Health and Happiness, da 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 da, but it didn't fit. So again, I'm using the same stamp that I used in the other card, the Happy Birthday, and it fits perfectly in this oval. So I'll stamp this twice. And then I'm going to stamp 2 of the little flourishes beside that in the green. First of all, I'm going to glue down my frame, so that tidies that up. So, and you could stamp put a third frame in the inside at the back of our front panel. There where my hand is on the left, you could put another frame there if you wanted, but I didn't think it was necessary. Okay, so now I'm putting the long stamp and I'm putting that down on the inside. I just thought it'd be nice to use the stamps rather than the pattern paper for this part, and I think the stamps are beautiful. So again, I'm going to do the light green ink and then I'm going to take the darker green ink and put that around the edges. Now you see there I had the purple one in my hand and I nearly stamped that down, but I was like, oh. But having done that, I thought, you know, that little flourish in the middle, wouldn't that be nice stamped in purple? So I did for a finish, I stamped that in the purple. Then I thought, I'm going to get my Zig marker, and I got my Zig marker in a lovely lilac shade. It's number 83 lilac, and I thought I'm going to color in the little flower. And I didn't do anything special. I didn't do a couple of different markers. I just find with the zigs, if you color it in, leave it to dry and come back in with the same color, it gives it a darker little tone. So there we are. Now we're going to stamp our 2 little flourishes as well. Perfect. Delighted with that. I think it looks really cool. Okay, so the back of the card. For that, I have got a strip of patterned paper and I'm going to stick that down towards the bottom even. And this is about 1/2 inch wide and it's 6 3/4 inches long. And again, I'm going to stamp my sentiment from the stamp set on the back of it using the MISTI. The great thing about the MISTI is, you know that if it doesn't stamp right the first time, you can always go at it a second or third time. So there we go. That's our Peekaboo 5x7 card, just to say happy birthday. I love that. I actually have it here in my hand and I've left it blank there beside the frame on the left hand side because I can always put a happy birthday die cut there. I can put a person's name on it, but I've just left it blank so I can embellish that when I need the card, when I want to give it to someone. So I've used some of my Nuvo drops, and again I'm tapping the card just to level off my drops, and it gives it a nice finish there. So that's it. That's our third card, guys. I can't believe we've got 3 cards made. And here is the 3 cards. So we have our Zfold card. I love that card. Then we have our pop-up card inspired by Dawn. And then we have our Peekaboo card. Lovely. Brilliant. I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial. If you have liked my tutorial, I'd love for you to click the like button down below. If you're a subscriber, thanks for subscribing, and if not, you might click the bell icon down below and you'll be notified then whenever I post a new video. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And until next time, guys, stay safe, look after yourself. Bye for now.